Thank you.
Do you want to give me a kiss?
No,
Hey, this is a family show, right? Welcome back to the Coalition for Marriage YouTube channel. You will know that we talk to lots and lots of different types of people on this channel about all different aspects of marriage, and sometimes we talk about marital advice. We're going to do a little bit about that again this evening, but with a wonderful couple, good friends of mine from Northern Ireland, Mary and Jim Russell. Hi both. You've been married for, well, we'll discover how long you've been married for, and we'll talk to you about some great advice that you've got for people looking to get married and what the secret sauce is that's kept you married for all those years. You've been married for over 50 years. How long have you been married?
I think it's around about
54 years.
Jim knows, you see. Fantastic. Can you remember how you got together? Where did you first meet, etc.? What drew you together?
Well, I had worked at Telephone Accounts in Belfast, which was a large building, doing telephone accounts, and Jim was a
An apprentice
engineer.
Yeah.
Mm.
They used to come into our restaurant, our the cafe, and one of my friends was a wee bit cheeky and a wee bit forward.
Mm.
Started off a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Her name was Pauline. She then married her boyfriend at the time, Eamon.
Ah.
All our friends from that year all got married around about the same time. We were all maybe about 20. We met.
Right.
We were 17 when we met.
Mm.
Married at 20 years old. You were just 21.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it earlier, Tony, when you said you would like to do the interview. And we were just saying that when we think about it, most of our friends were all getting married. It was an expectation.
Yeah.
That if you met a boy or whatever, you were enjoying company, you were enjoying conversation, you were getting to know people.
Mm.
It wasn't the expectation that you had to have any sort of a deeper relationship. If you felt warm feelings, all that, you progressed into marriage. But nowadays, that's not just the same.
Yeah. Well, you're funny because there's that. You mentioned culturally, so it was the done thing that everyone did it, and I think that's one of the problems we've got today. So in a lot of our societies, it's people want to do like the people around them, which is really interesting, isn't it?
It is something that I have wondered about, because when we were talking about it earlier, Jim said that in the lives of our children, who are now adults, and we have 12 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
But they look at this period of their lives differently than what they're not necessarily looking for a lifetime partner. Some of them, I'm not talking about our children particularly, I'm talking generally. And of course, there's a tendency now to sort of live with someone where that's really not an expectation when we were young.
So it's quite interesting because one of my daughters got married last year, 21. And what's really, really, really interesting about that is that so many of her friends had got married and are getting married. And a lot of weekends, they're just sighing because they've got another wedding to go to.
That's
and
right.
They've got this fairly large social group and everyone's getting married. And partly it's because, it's almost like in their group, it's the expected thing to do. But also because a lot of them see mum and dad enjoy married life and think, yeah, I want some of that, which is really interesting.
No, I was just saying that's what we were talking about, the fact that sometimes it can happen that when one couple decide to marry, even in today, and then a second couple decide to get married, that's the idea maybe in the others' minds, that's a nice thing to do. But I think the important thing really is to get to know somebody, choose wisely.
We'll get on to your advice, but it's quite interesting because there's a lot of kind of poor view of marriage, kind of high divorce rates, 50% or more divorce rate. But actually, when you look at the stats and when you look at first-time marriages for people over 20, the success rate is between 70 and 80%. And when you look at religious groups, it's even higher.
Yeah.
So actually, if you look at the broad numbers, and the broad numbers, don't forget, include people who get married multiple times and divorce multiple times, and include figures when a marital partner dies, then that's an ended marriage. So the actual figures of first time marriage of people in their 20s is really positive, and the feedback from married couples, the overwhelming majority, 80% plus, are happy or very happy.
That's
So
right.
and the truth is, a lot of people don't want to talk about that because, oh no, we want to run marriage down. And it's a funny old thing, because I go up and down the country, and in fact, I've seen you guys in Northern Ireland, and it's lovely to see you. But I go all around the UK, and a lot of people are teachers that I talk to, and a lot of them say we're not allowed to talk, or we're encouraged not to talk about marriage and long-term relationships in school. And you think, but the evidence is there. The happiest people alive are married with children. Why on earth aren't we talking about it? It's really interesting.
And the thing is, I think for girls, well, for both men and women, but the one thing I think about, the time with which a female can bear children is limited.
Yeah.
And if you think about maybe finding a marriage partner going on into your 20s, or if you're pursuing careers, or if there's other things, that opportunity, it starts to wane. You're saying about the schools maybe not promoting marriage, but I don't think they promote. I think they're over promoting careers, and the single
Yeah.
as much as not promoting marriage.
And also, I mean, when you look at the data, which again is all over the place really in terms of the reasons, it's all the cost of getting married. Well, it doesn't actually cost an awful lot of, you needn't spend a lot of money to get married. And in fact, when you look at, there's a few bits of research out there that look at cost of weddings and success of weddings. And the more you spend on the wedding, according to some of it, the less likely you are to have a great marriage. So actually, you get married and you think, well, let's not spend an awful lot of money because it's about our future, not about the ceremony, or about the massive meal with hundreds and hundreds of people.
But again, when we were young, it was, you went to church, usually got married, you went for something to eat somewhere, the hotel, and that was,
Well, yes, you didn't have. I mean, nowadays, as you say, there's their wedding. It could either be a church or it could be just in a venue.
Yeah.
And then a reception then for the guest. And some weddings have an event even the night before the wedding, and that. But it is encouraging, Tony. I mean, the figures that you talked about there are it's really encouraging, but it is, from my point of view, very surprising. I got the impression, that marriage wasn't as popular as it was many, many years ago, but yet the stats are saying something else.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, there are still fewer people getting married, Jim, without a shadow of a doubt, and they're getting married later. But when you look at the stats around, and it's always been the case, really, people who have got married, first-time marriages in the 20s, the success rate is very high. And I say that the numbers are skewed by people who get divorced and get married multiple times. And, that skews the numbers, really.
It was just that when Mary and I were talking about this, prior to the discussion with yourself, I got the impression that there was less marriages now. People. And then we were reflecting as to, why would that be? Because I think that in our day, which was over 50 years ago, there was expectation in families that people did.
That's right.
And you went through the motions of, finding a girlfriend and then spending time over time and deciding at some point, yes, I want this to be long term.
Yeah.
Another while the view would be, the discussion would be, then do you think then we should then tie the knot? And that's the way the process went. Nowadays, quite different to that, which I think is coming through from the media point of view. When you watch movies nowadays and dramas, I have to say it, if you don't mind me saying it online, but quite often the visuals that you'll see when a couple might meet, they invert and will go to bed before the night's out.
Yeah, well, that's right.
And that's what's being promoted, but not what's not being promoted through the TV is people getting married.
No, and again, the stats there are very clear. So if you've had, even one other sexual partner before you get married to your marital partner, the the likelihood of divorce goes up 50%. And then the more you've had, the higher that goes. Now, that doesn't mean everyone will. It's just a likelihood thing, you know. But the stats are quite clear that sex before marriage, sex is supposed to be like a type of glue, you know, and like sticky tape. And you keep taking sticky tape off and putting it from one person to another, it loses its sticky, you know. It's not as sticky, and it doesn't glue in the way it does if you just, you know, if you have sex only with your marital partner. That's something completely unique and special that binds you together in an amazing way.
Just listening to you, Jim, talking, the other thing you mentioned to me when we were just chatting about it was, you said not only you might decide to move forward with the relationship, but you also said to give you a period of time to say, this person is not for me.
No, that's right. Well,
You know what I mean?
that period
It
as
didn't
well.
always have to be that you just
Yeah.
along that
Yeah.
particular line.
The kind of pre-marriage advice is a big thing, you know, and a lot of people don't really understand that there are things you should talk about before you get married, you know, in terms of, you know, maybe even before you're engaged. The idea of you're courting with somebody, and you know this, back when you find out about the person. Do they think about things the same way as I do? And it doesn't mean you have to have the same hobbies and you know, because that can be completely different. But is your outlook? So tell us about some of those things. I mean, what in your mind should a boy and a girl look for that they agree on?
I have been thinking about that a little bit. And I know that obviously there has to be some sort of physical attraction. There has to be that little Cupid's arrow, shall we say?
Yeah.
Somewhere there to sort of ignite that spark. And oddly enough, my father used to sing, not professionally, but he had a good voice. But I remember him singing old songs like Some Enchanted Evening. And I maybe that's a wee bit fluffy and romantic, but you know, that sort of gentle growing together. And if you felt that the person that you were with did not seem to have that, I don't know, that
Connection,
romance,
really, the connection it had to be.
you know, I think there'd be maybe warning signs, maybe an inconsiderate remark, or possibly just something that rang a little bell. And I think you should listen to those if you're well, courtship. You mentioned the word courtship. You very rarely hear that anymore. I love to see young couples. In fact, when you were talking earlier, it came into my mind. I heard of a young couple, both of whom were from broken homes. They made a pact that no matter what the future held, they were never going to divorce or settle.
Wow.
Now, I thought that was good, but then I said to myself, that's just like the marriage vows anyway. You know?
Yeah.
That sort of thing you would like to talk about with somebody, you know, that you still had those views, that you would be seeing what came together, come what may.
And that's a great thing, because I know for my own marriage, you know, we believed that. We made a promise and we said, well, this is for good. And then after we got married, we discovered that we'd both married a monster. And it's like, oh my goodness, how am I going to live with this? But you've got no way out. So you decide, well, let's work this out. You know, let's try. And, you know, my monster's been slightly tamed by my wife, and I wouldn't dare to say she's not a monster. Of course, she's perfect. So, you know, there's no taming necessary from my perspective. But,
it's like,
you know, you find out, you grow together. If splitting up is not an option, well, then, you know, you got to work through it. And after 30 years, I would say our marriage is better now than it's ever been in every way. And that's, you know, that's been like, it's like the view at the top of a big mountain. You got to work hard to get there, but it's worth everything once you do.
I've always remembered about the friend told me she married Mr. Right, but she didn't know his first name was Always.
That's right. Well, that's true enough, isn't it? That's true, because you never really know somebody until you live with them.
That mindset carries you through, you know. Maybe without harking back. But there was that feeling that when you got married, it was for good. In fact, do you know?
It did, because in those days, again, you know, divorce, I mean, in the church, Irish people didn't, I mean, the church wouldn't allow it, you know, and so, in a sense, those were hindrances to people who didn't maybe, you know, hit it off type of thing. But the normal, you know, nowadays, again, I'm assuming then, without knowing all the facts, is that it's now easy to get divorced, so it's an easy option.
But it is. Yeah, it's very easy.
Whereas it wasn't an easy option many years ago,
Mm.
and that's just the way things like, and that's, I mean, that has happened across all different facets of life anyway.
And it should be hard. It should be hard because you've made a promise, and it should be hard because, especially if kids are involved, it's devastating. And a lot of people say, well, my kids were all right, they were much better. Good for you. But if you look at the population, in fact, there's a report I was just writing about earlier on today that's just come out, which just shows, kind of one of those long-term studies, unequivocally how bad divorce is for kids. It's absolutely devastating. The consequences go on for decades and decades and affect every part of their lives, And yes, some kids do get through it. Okay, great. But the majority, I'm afraid, don't, according to the evidence. And that doesn't mean you should live with somebody who's abusing you, blah. You should go, and no one's saying that. But actually, we should prepare people for marriage better. We should have lots better marriage counselling to help people work things out, because it's hard.
Tony, we were a wee bit unique as well, of course. We were living, I met Mary in December 1969.
Wow.
And the troubles had started in August.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So, and Mary and I were from different sides of the divide.
Oh my goodness. So it's a bit of a Romeo and Juliet thing, really. Yeah.
We were in different sides of Belfast as well. I was from the east and south, and Mary was from the west. And the thing was, and maybe that's maybe why it's been successful for us. I mean, from a long-term point of view, is that when the trouble started, then there was nothing in the evenings. Places closed down. There was ringed off the steel.
There's a lot of walking and talking.
And ours was walking and talking. So we were in the early evening and walked and talked. There was nowhere else to go. Therefore, we got to know each other very, very, and what we liked and what we didn't like.
And that's brilliant. And how you feel about all sorts of different things, which is so important.
And of course, we had to then make your decision then, because the marriage that we were going into was frowned upon generally, although not within our families. It wasn't. Our families got on really well even from the very start. But a lot of other people who lived maybe in more troubled places, weren't able to. But Mary said about our friends, and it's the same then. And it's lovely to hear about your daughter and her circle of friends. So we had that as well, we were in 18, 19, and just a series of weddings after that. 40 years later, it's a series of 40 40th anniversary parties as well. And in that circle there was mixed marriages as well. And I think that helped everybody as well.
Great, yeah, and help society. Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes too, like when the children come along, it's not all a bed of roses either, but you make sacrifices, and I do think I know a wee bit of what you were getting at there, Tony, in that sometimes, when you're in the thick of it, and there was only one wage coming in, and there was children coming along, and we sort of muddled through, managed. But I do think the rewards, and I would like young people, if there was one thing I would like to say to any young couple, is that there are great rewards to be had. The ordinary, everyday joys. And I would say to anybody, maybe, even if you feel a bit, it's money problems or rearing children or things like that, that it is rewarding.
And it's hard work. I mean, it's like a nice garden, isn't it? You put the work in, you put the effort in, and sometimes it's backbreaking, and you don't think you can stand the heat, or it's just too cold and you just can't stand it. But actually, you keep working. And again, in an environment, if you can find people to give you advice sometimes when you need it.
And to tell you the truth, I think even for me, you've got sisters, you've got female friends, and I'm talking to all of them. Sometimes you can let off a bit of steam and everything, it's all just.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't like to be isolated in a marriage.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because yes, a lot of people are working these days, and you can argue you can't help that because you've got to. But then, you need society, you need friends around you, friends who, friends who you can trust to give you good advice and to be there for you in a positive way. But then also you need time with each other. And I know when our kids were growing up, and dare I say even now, because they keep coming back all the time, you never really get rid of them. But even then, we can, with my work and my wife's work, we can find ourselves, just living in the same house if we don't make time for each other, and you've got to do that because life's tiring and you get home at night and you're both tired or something. But actually, you've got to make time to enjoy quality time together and remember what the relationship's about, really.
I think a bit of humour.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Well, you guys have got that. I've stayed with you guys, and you've got that in spades. And your home is such a lovely, warm, welcoming home. It's, it's beautiful. That's why it's so good to talk to you both. So, what would you say? If you were giving some advice to couples who maybe no specific reason, but were finding marriage hard work. Maybe they've got over the honeymoon period. They're like 5 or 6 years in, and they're thinking, really, is this it? What would your advice be?
And most likely they're probably at a stage where it is going to be difficult. They've probably reached that point where the cold hard realities are setting in, whether it's the things you have to do, the responsibilities. Because sometimes, Tony, when you get married and you have children, you do feel responsible. Maybe for a lot of people, for the first time, the responsibilities of meeting, what bills, appointment, clothing, all of that, the reality of the responsibility of that. And I would say then, you have to bear that responsibility, but hopefully the other person in the union both of you will be bearing the responsibility. What do you think? And there's a time whenever maybe.
But I think it's looking at saying. You mentioned something, and Tony, you mentioned as well about your daughter that all her friends. Now I know that when our eldest son was getting married, he's now 50 years of age. But when he was getting married, I remember saying to him about the friends that he had. The friends that he had gathered up at that age. Okay, and I had said, stay true with each other. Stay together as friends. Sometimes people get married and then they close off. They close in, if you know what I mean, and they lose the perspective outside of their own age. And what I'm trying to really say in that one there is that, if they are alone, then they've got issues, then that becomes massive within their life. Okay. It's like saying, I remember there's a number of jobs I've done in the past, which I have to say were very, very stressful. People used to say to me, I seem to be able to take the stress. Okay. And it was because I was doing other things. I wasn't doing anything else outside of my work. That stress would have probably give me a heart attack. But I was doing other things, and particularly raising a family, and also doing a lot of DIY because we had only one wage, so all the work in this house I had to do myself. So I used to plan those in my head. Now, I'm giving that as an example, is that if you're in a marriage and it's not going great, if you've got those other friends, it's not to talk to them. It's just to it's like what do you call it? It's like a diversionary thing.
Yeah. Distraction.
Outside of the problem.
Yeah, that's right.
They see other things, and then the problem becomes a smaller part of their life, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Becomes big, and then that's when the breakdown can happen.
I think it's very difficult for people these days who are both out working. I remember when we got married. Before we got married, there was a couple that when you had got married before us, and I'm not sure you can do that these days, but or do this these days. But the lady said, "Oh, I'm not going to work because I don't want two of us to come home stressed." Now, and they decided to cut their cloth to fit the husband's salary, which was great. And fortunately, Liz and I were able to do that when we were married 30 years ago. And again, you can't have everything, you can't have much. but you cut your cloth. I'm not sure how easy it is to do that these days. And so everyone's coming home run ragged.
Yeah.
And everyone sees the worst bit of each other because they're completely shattered, and they've spent the day giving their best to somebody else and not their partner. And it's like, oh my goodness, it's hard these days. It really, really is. And so that's why I think couples really need to, find opportunities to spend quality time with each other, get the communication right, because sometimes you got these buried issues that no one can be bothered to talk to because they know everyone's going to fly off the handle. Tell us how to deal with, you must have, in 54 years, you must have had some big rows. How do you deal with big issues?
Possibly, I think the one thing that I think you have to try and avoid would be resentment.
Yep.
Because I think one party is doing too much and the other fella's not right, or whatever you think. So I think resentment is a wee part, of course, if you don't want to be talking about maybe infidelity, but things can build up, just as you say, they can build up. And I think avoid resentment, and that means if there's something really annoying you, maybe you should just say so. And you don't want to be brimming with sort of you used the word festering. You don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And I do think what Jim says is valid too, because sometimes you could go for a walk, you could go for a walk, and sometimes you come back and their perspective's a wee bit different. You were getting about being too insular. You really get the chance to go for a walk.
It just becomes a massive issue.
Don't let things build up.
Your father used to always say, never let the sun set on an argument.
Yeah, good verse from the Bible there. Yeah. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Yeah, absolutely right. And sometimes my wife's better than I am. She's she'll always try and make things up if we've had a row or something before we go to bed. She's much better at that than I am, which is to her credit. She's very, very good. But making that time, first of all, every day you should, even if you're busy going out to work together, every day you need to connect. You need to, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, ideally at the end of the day, tell me about your day. Really tell me what got to you today. What made you happy today, if anything? I want to know. That only need to be a 2 or 3 minute conversation. A kiss when you leave in the morning. And what do they say? It's like 6 or 7 seconds. Yeah, because you can't fake a kiss for 6 or 7 seconds. It's a proper one. It's not a peck on the lips, and then maybe one day a week, if you can't do that, one evening, a fortnight or something, you take some hours together to just talk and be each other, and you've got to do that. You've just got to do that.
But I wonder then nowadays, with the amount of homeworking now, Tony, which
from home,
working from home, I'm wondering then, is that, although it hasn't come from the government, it might actually go that way, and that
it's interesting for those who can. It's and that gets us back to. First of all, I interviewed a lady called Erica Commissar who wrote a book called Being There, which is all about the importance, as you say, Mary, of mums being around in the first 1 to 3 years. The absolutely transformational importance to the child of mum. Being able to do that, and our society doesn't really allow that. And that's, if you can't read that book, it's a long book. Go and listen to the interview. It's so important. But then, Jim, you've hit on an absolute amazing thing as well, because I think Nancy Pearcey wrote about this, and I've got an interview with her. But she was, before the Industrial Revolution, well, men and women largely used to work at home together. Yep, and so the women and the men were working on the same job, whatever the job of the family was, and the kids, they both took part in bringing up the kids. It was only when the Industrial Revolution came along and the man left the house to go away to a factory, and the woman was left at home on her own all day, every day. That was no life to lead. And then he came back shattered after having spent 12 or 14 hours working for the man. And, they were separated most of their conscious time, etc., etc. But you're right, the whole kind of working from home stuff allows a little bit of that to come back again. So what when you were talking with each other, what other general advice would you give? You've been married 54 years. I'm a newbie. I'm just 30 years. I haven't got a clue. But what advice would you give then?
Okay, I'll tell you this. Our children, they come, most of them come every Sunday.
Every Sunday, yes.
Now, it's you cook, you clean, you wipe up later, but they do spark off each other. They enjoy each other's company. They're all very witty, if it could be say that.
I'm sure they are. Knowing you two, I'm sure they are.
And the laughter and the fun sometimes here is pretty good. The crack, as they say in Ireland.
Yep.
So I think for me, just knowing, and even if they're looking over old photographs and somebody else say, remember a wee tradition. Well, the reason I'm telling you that is the kids still remember those things, a whole lot of wee things like that. I think you're building your own traditions. They might be foolish little things, but you are building your own traditions. You're giving kids an anchor in life.
Yeah.
Something that is strong. Something that they know is there, the same as we did with my parents, you did with yours. There's something there to be had about a good, strong family connection. Building up your own memories, your own traditions. But we things like that get passed down. The links,
they do.
You want to build strong links.
You're raising really important issues, and the research backs up exactly what you're saying, Mary. So family rituals, they needn't cost a lot of money neither. It needn't be, we went to Antigua every fortnight, or, no, it's just simple little things. We eat together regularly, every tea time we eat, whatever it is.
But if going back to the issue about, what that was how that's how we react with our kids. But, why did we stay together for 54 years?
I'm so.
Plus, what did I say? 54. But what I'm saying is, that was the other question is, what did we do to keep our marriage going?
Yeah.
Oh, and I think, personally, I think it's because we had 7 children. Because we had a responsibility that we wanted them to have a good upbringing, a happy upbringing. And it wasn't foreign holidays, Tony. We didn't go very far. We stayed within the island of Ireland because we couldn't afford to go foreign travel. The kids will always remember as well that when we had 5 children, we used to go on holiday with 5 children in the back seat of a car. Not allowed anymore. Okay. Plus a dog.
And a skateboard. That kept hitting everybody
in the back of the head.
Fantastic.
Back of the car. And but I feel what kept us together as well, we had the children quite early on, and then our whole focus was looking after, bringing the children up, making a happy home for them, and hoping that they would do well and helping them to do well. And you couldn't have done that if you divorced. Back to your point at the very start, the impact that it has on children. The divorce issue. Our case, we never ever considered divorce. But the focus for us, but the focus was to try and do the best and keep a happy home for the kids.
Yeah. But I don't want to over as if holier than thou either.
We're
ordinary. Like there was.
But there's an old saying, Tony, as well. I didn't know what happiness was until I got married. And
you're going to get a good tea tonight. But it's true. It's true. There's a dimension of happiness which you just can't explain or explore.
I think that's what we were talking about earlier. There'll come a time when the froth will begin to settle, and the wedding is over, and the responsibilities and all of that.
Yeah.
You can't maintain. I don't think you can maintain.
Yeah.
Be frothy. It has to be grounded. It has to be.
Yeah. But the thing I'm getting from both of you, right, is that first of all, you're not dependent on the other person for your happiness. You make yourself happy. Yep. And secondly, you don't give necessarily to please you. You're giving to the marriage. You're both giving to this thing which is greater than both of you, which is this commitment that you've decided for your family, for your society, and for you both, this is your decision. I mean, there's so much we could talk about in terms of the difference between men and women, generally speaking, and the way they, it's like we're very compartmentalized. And I'm always having this with my dear wife. Something will happen. It's over there in a compartment. It's over there. It's in a box. It's in a Tupperware box over there in my brain. That's not how she thinks.
No.
Everything is connected to everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Everything is connected to everything. But understanding that we're both just built in those different ways is a real help to us both, because then we can recognize that.
Do you remember the other morning you said to me, I did something today that you've always wanted me to do and you never even noticed?
That's right.
And I said, what? And he said, I'm not telling you unless you can guess it yourself. So I said, okay. I says, this is something I'm always asking you to do. He said, yes. I says, I know what it is. You didn't throw soaking wet tea bags in the sink. And that was it. And I said, was it that you didn't leave your cup full of cold tea in at the computer? No, that wasn't it. But I went through about 4 things.
10 things. She went through 10 things.
As you say, women's brain is entirely different.
Yeah.
It's entirely different. They're all connected, all these wee things. But it cleared a weed from the guttering.
That's a horrible job, mind you.
Oh, no. I don't know when she wasn't looking.
And it's only going to come back again as soon as it's windy.
But what got me was I found there was 10 other things that she would want me to do. And I didn't know anything about.
And you hadn't done any of them.
I hadn't done that.
Oh my goodness. Well, there you go. That's some work for you.
Not to say, doesn't spare you any of life's problems.
No.
It's not a cocoon. It's more that it gives you the strength to face any problem.
Mm-hmm.
It won't be, as I say, it won't be that you will not face difficulties. You will face problems. You will face difficulties that can come from without. They might come in. But the thing I do think is, if you are saying, "Okay, Sarah, the one thing that ain't happening, we're going to see them both. We're going to see it through together."
No, we are.
What I mean?
Yeah. And the other thing, I mean, as Amelia said, having 7 kids, having partners and wives and husbands, having children, having grandchildren, and whatever, and all the issues that go on in there.
You're not going to be
spared. You're not going to be spared at all. The things have happened. And then you look and maybe other people and sort of say, well, they don't have that. Does that make them happier? But the problem, I'm going to say the problem, we haven't had serious problems, but the issues that we have had are minute compared with the good times that we've had in the marriage and having family. They cover, that really helps us keep going and realize the issues that we have to face every now and again.
Well, I think a lot of young couples, that would be the way you would like to think that when they're setting out together or talking to each other and maybe courtship, you want to know, is this the person you'd like to spend the rest of your life with?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you get that nice feeling, I think I like him and I like her.
Yeah.
I think too, people used to be a wee bit derogatory and say you were looking at the world through rose-tinted glasses. But thank God gives you a set of rose-tinted glasses sometimes.
Yeah.
Because without them, you may never sail out on you might never set sail on a marriage together. You might be too fearful. So I think it's not a bad thing to be optimistic and, positive. And I would like to think, young couples, because it is nice to see a young couple maybe laughing, talking.
Yeah.
Going along. Well, that's it. If you're happy, then we're happy then.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. It's a real delight. You're a wonderfully happy couple, a lovely family. You're involved in so much useful stuff in the community and wider. You're just a joy to be around, and I hope others get the infection from you and think, we want that too, let's get married.
Well, thanks very much, Tony. Thanks for your time as well. It was lovely having you over here because we had good laughs when you were here. And I think it was also lovely the other week when we went to London and we walked the room and there you were.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. Get about the place. Listen, let's do it again.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Okay,
Yep.
Tony, thank you.
Jim and Mary Russell, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Do you want to give me a kiss?
Hey, this is a family show, right? Well done, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.